Hey, everybody, Kevin here with Pursuing Pixels, and welcome back to another edition of Save It for the Cast, and you know the drill by now. I'm going to be kicking the ball over to John, Randall, and I in just a little bit here for a little video games chit-chat. We definitely stay on the video games track this time around for the most part. I guess we dig into a tiny little bit of wrestling here as well, but dig into just a tiny bit of Dark Souls, a little Stardew Valley. John picked up the full PUNKCAKE collection, so he's been kind of diving into a handful of those on his Steam Deck, so we get some first impressions on that end. I'm actually really looking forward to talking some more PUNKCAKE stuff with John and hopefully Randall as well in the future, because we've got all those games at this point, and I just love those guys so much. Talk a little Warhammer 40K, and when I say talk a little, I mean we literally just kind of touch on all these topics briefly, but yeah, we just kind of all over the map for the chit chat this week, and then for the stuff that I've been playing. Also on the lighter end, I'm gearing up actually right after I record this and finish editing it here this morning. I'm going to be rolling out and heading to Chicago for the show that the band that John and I play in, which is called Boss Fight. I don't know if we ever mentioned that, but I'll try to put a link to our stuff here. But yeah, we're playing our first show in like 5+ years. It might even be close to 6 years, to be honest. Ever since I had that hernia surgery 5+ years ago. So yeah, I haven't really been doing a ton of gaming since it's kind of a short week here, but I have fired up a handful of things. I actually fired up very, very briefly the demo for this game called Europa. I was just kind of scrolling through the Nintendo Switch eShop and was looking at the upcoming releases and saw that actually quite a few of the games on that upcoming releases list had demos available, and Europa was one of those, and I fired it up. I was like, oh, it just kind of caught my eye. I don't think I had seen it before, other than maybe if it was featured. I think it was in like the most recent like Indie World or Nintendo Direct, but I fired it up for just a few minutes, like I said, because it was one of those demos where I was like, okay, this feels like it's the opening bits of the game, and maybe it's still in development. I don't know if it's something where it's like, this is going to be, the actual opening of the game. I'm not sure, because there were a few small things that were a little rough around the edges. Like something about the movement felt like a little bit floaty, but not in a bad way. It's a little bit of a 3D platforming adventure with some puzzle elements, and based on the trailer, it looks like there's some action and stuff as well. Although it doesn't look like there's a ton of combat. You might be like dodging things from other enemies and stuff like that, but at best I could tell, it didn't look like you were like destroying anything. And in the little bit I played, you weren't, but basically you were just like running around jumping in this like luscious, like kind of anime Studio Ghibli kind of vibe. It definitely reminds me a little bit of Ni no Kuni in the art direction, and just the opening again, like it just felt so cinematic right off the bat. Like, and again, I was playing this on Nintendo Switch, and best I can tell, that's the only way you can play this demo right now. I guess I shouldn't say that for sure. I only tried checking on my Xbox, but I was like, oh, I want to see how this runs, because it actually ran great on Switch. It's a 3D, cell shaded kind of thing. Again, back to that Ni no Kuni is like a great touch point in terms of how the game looks. But again, it's more of a 3D platformer, and you best I can tell, you're just kind of like jumping. You have this kind of like jetpack thing that can launch you in the air and help you like kind of levitate at a way higher elevation. It seems like you can charge that up and power that up throughout the game, at least best I could tell in the opening little bits here. And then you can also hold down the jump button to kind of hover and flutter down and just really like gently. And that's where it just felt like a little bit floaty, but I guess that's what you're literally doing. You're kind of floating down, and there's no, you don't have any wings or anything like that. So you're just it's kind of like a weird looking animation, I guess. But other than that, I'm just really excited for this game. It was a game that really wasn't even on my radar. Again, I might have seen it in one of those Nintendo World or Indie Direct things, or whatever they're called, Indie World Nintendo Directs. But nonetheless, I fired up that demo and was really, really impressed. Like I said, after about 5 minutes or so, was just like, you know what, I'm going to put this game down and just wait until this comes out, because this seems like it's absolutely awesome. And again, the cinematic opening sequence where it's just like kind of doing some credits, but while you're playing the game, like it just was so well done. And I just really am looking forward to checking this game out when it fully comes out, which I think it said this year, but it didn't have any further release date beyond that. But then a couple of the other games that I've been playing as well, I fired up a stream the other day and had a little bit of technical difficulties both before and during. So I ended up only playing one game during the stream. I was planning on playing a few more, but the game that I ended up playing was this game called Box Room, which the developer Ishmael Rodriguez was kind enough to send our way. And I'm a big fan of their games. They made Below the Ocean, which we've talked about, which started out as a game jam game and then got fleshed out into like a full release. Both versions of which I really, really loved. And then I think I also briefly mentioned Tuttle Star Flower Harvest, I think is the name of the game. Some some version of those words scrambled in some order, but nonetheless, I've been a huge fan of all their stuff, both game jam wise and then some of their commercial releases, and this seems to be their kind of third Steam commercial release. And Box Room here is kind of like a really cool top-down puzzler that kind of feels like a little bit like Panel de Pon or Tetris Attack, if you're familiar with that game at all, at least in terms of like the blocks that you use. Like it's kind of like a match 3 puzzler, but you can definitely match way more than 3. But then again, it's like a top-down dungeon crawler at the same time. And the way that, the gameplay is top down, but then the way that they throw the dungeon crawling into the mix is like you kind of like have to clear challenges on each given room. And then you get keys that you can then progress and unlock more doors and open different paths. And then each room kind of has like a new series of challenges. The only like negative thing I'll say about the game is like a run or a round or whatever you want to call it can last a little bit long. And at least for me, maybe I'm not getting the combos fast enough. So if the challenge is like, get to level 30. It's like I only played, I think, 3 stages on the stream, and I played for like 40 minutes, which is not a bad thing. It seems like this game is like jam-packed, but it was getting like just a tiny bit repetitive, but at the same time, it's like a really fresh concept, and that like you're, again, with that top-down gameplay, like I've seen some games that do kind of like the Wario's Wood style thing, where it's like a side-on platformer sort of thing, and it's a, box falling puzzler or whatever from the top Tetris style, but this feels more like, you get 4 boxes that fall down right in the center of the room every given amount of time, and then you have to take those and kind of chuck them around, and it kind of reminds me of the game Wilmot's Warehouse a little bit, because you're kind of like organizing the boxes, because at first you start out with a limited amount of colors, like 3, 4, 5, but then they start throwing even more as the stage goes on, and there's like 7, 8, 9 colors, so you can't just say, okay, I'm going to throw all these in this corner, all these, and then there's a bunch of different boxes that have different like combo power-ups or bomb explode, like a TNT kind of thing, or like a nitro box that blows up everything in, kind of Bomberman style. There's just a ton of stuff going on in this game, almost to the point where it's a little bit too frantic, but I'm looking forward to playing this one some more and like getting the hang of things and hopefully getting a little bit better. But nonetheless, I really love it. And I really love the 3D effect of the boxes as they like fall down and bounce, or when you pick them up and throw them. Like there's this really cool rotational 3D effect. The game's like 2D pixel art, but it's just such a cool effect. I really like how it looks, and I love the music. Just huge fan of this developer. And then the game that I was planning on playing after that was this game called Pilapila or Pilapila. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right either way there, but it's a side-on 2D puzzle platformer. Although you can't jump in this game, you're pretty much just moving side to side, and then you can, if there's like a staircase or whatever, or you can pick up boxes as the main mechanic here, similar to Box Room, but again, you're just trying to reach the exit of the stage here and pick up various boxes and just place them, again, to make like a staircase for yourself to climb up in the early stages, and then as things move along, they start throwing like these purple boxes into the mix that when you throw them kind of like down a pit, they'll expand almost like a giant, like accordion, and they'll stop at like the highest level next to it, I guess, if that makes sense. I don't know exactly how to describe that, but they'll kind of stop at whatever. You can basically bridge a gap or fill these, so you have to like kind of make a stack over next to it of regular boxes and then throw the purple one down the pit and then have it line up at the level you want it at. I'm sure I'm not explaining this well at all. And then on the other hand, they've thrown some green boxes into the mix that you can then throw on top of regular boxes, and just clears them all away, just destroys them and kind of smashes them. So you can kind of clear paths and you can undo all your moves. It's just like a really thoughtful, even in the very early stages, like you're like, okay, I got to think about every last move, every last box I'm going to use, where I'm going to put it. And it's just quite a bit of fun. I'm really enjoying that one quite a bit. And it's making me think, and I really like how after you clear a certain number of stages in a given world, it just unlocks the next world, and you can kind of bounce around like, okay, I'm stuck on this stage, like I'm in world 3, but I haven't cleared world 1 or 2. And I really like that because the puzzles have been pretty dang tricky so far, especially in the second and third world. So, I kind of jumped on from the first one just thinking like, okay, let me just see more of this game. But yeah, I recorded a little gameplay footage of that. And I guess on the YouTube channel, I'm going to try to start doing a little more gameplay only, a little mix of both, just because I haven't had as much time to do some streams and I want to keep the games coming. So you might see a few more like gameplay only videos, but nonetheless, if I'm putting it up on the YouTube channel, it's definitely a recommendation. And then I just wanted to give another shout out, because I know I've talked about some of their games in the past, to Panda Indie Studios. I picked up a couple of their games on sale recently. One that I wasn't a huge fan of, actually, probably the least I've enjoyed one of their games, and I'll just kind of briefly mention that one. It's called Cave Bad, and they have this game, or this character that they have a few games that they're featured in now. I think I've talked about Pity Pit on the podcast even before that I liked quite a bit. This one's more of like kind of like a top-down dungeon crawling Bomberman inspired roguelike, but it's just like a little too retro inspired for me. Like, I don't know, I just couldn't quite. It didn't quite grab my attention, I guess. I was going to say I couldn't quite get into it, but I'm planning on giving it another chance because they've made a ton of great shmups that I'm a huge fan of, even a few that I was unaware that they released, and a few games that they've put out kind of recently as well. And then, yeah, I picked up another one of their more recent ones called Hellwell, which definitely feels like it's inspired a little bit by Vampire Survivors, or more than a little bit by Vampire Survivors, but you're kind of like playing as this like mage or something like that, and you're basically trying to protect your crypt. I think you're more like a demon or something like that, and you're trying to protect your crypt from like all these angels and whatever that are flying in on a given stage, and you basically have a little bit of time to set up your. It's got a little more of a tower defense angle than Vampire Survivors has. That's kind of the twist here, and it's got a really great like 1-bit-esque, with a few pops of color presentation, some really great music. And I really like how the game is laid out. It takes a little bit of getting used to the controls because you're basically just using, like, you walk up to something, press the one button that there is to use, on the one face button, I should say, and then you use the shoulder buttons to kind of toggle through the menus on like a given tower to upgrade it or buy more health for that tower if it's taken some damage, or repair it or just buy something new from the shop. But it takes a little bit of getting used to like the game flow. And then I just cleared, like I was like, oh, this game seems like it's a little bit small because I beat the boss for the first time, or the first boss. And then now on like the opening title screen, there's like this pedestal with like a little mini version of that boss on it. And then it was just, when I cleared the stage or whatever, it was like the map is now bigger. So now when I start a run, like the map is a little bit larger, and I'm guessing there's maybe going to be a new boss because there's like 8 or 10, I don't know exactly how many, but there's a handful of different pedestals on the bottom of the screen there on the title screen. So I'm like, okay, I'm guessing each one of those is for a new boss. So I'm kind of curious how the progression from this game is going to work. And like I said, they've released a few more. This developer has released a few more shmups since the last time I took a look at their catalog. So I'm really looking forward to checking out some more of their games. Like I said, I wasn't as into Cave Bad, but I'm willing to give it another shot because I'm just such a big fan of their stuff. But Hellwell is just a ton of fun. And I really want to pick up Excessive Trim as well, which is a really cool game that actually was developed originally for the Disc Room Game Jam. It was called Harvest Doom, and they've like kind of tweaked the theming a little bit and like the style and whatnot. And I'm just, again, a huge fan of their stuff. And love to see like a game jam game get turned into a full, iteration of a game, or a commercially released game, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I've done enough rambling here. I was trying to keep it a little bit longer here because the conversation for John, Randall, and I is a little bit on the short and sweet side, although it's still like 10 or 12 minutes or whatever. But nonetheless, yeah, I'm going to be heading to Chicago here in probably a couple hours from the time I finish recording this. So hopefully the show goes well. And until next time, we will catch you then, and take care.
Megan Carnes just booted up Stardew Valley.
I love that. I think I've said this before, but I love that every time when she's on her Switch, I know it's her because she is, for whatever reason, the only person that is friends with me on both my like main account. And then like, I think I had like one's tied to my email address and one I think I have tied to the Pursuing Pixels email address. So she like friended both accounts. So every time when I see like however many people are on, but then a 1 above the Pursuing Pixels one, I'm like, Megan's playing something. What's she playing? She's playing Pikmin. I know she got Pikmin 4. She's always playing good games.
Yeah,
that's great.
Stardew obviously being no exception.
Yeah, it's that new one, but that's not on this episode, because this episode it's Dark Souls 2.
That's right.
Scholar of the First Sin.
Kind of episode of sequels here.
Subtitle.
I didn't know either. I think I actually only knew because I was like, John mentioned it, or like when I looked it up on like Steam or something when I was like pasting. I always put like a link in the episode description if we talk about something on the podcast.
Yeah.
And I was like going to look for the link, and I was like, "Is this like a DLC or what's the deal here?" And it's like, "Nope, it's just the name of the game."
I do think it is the
name of the game is Dark Souls.
That's right.
I think it's the deluxe edition with the DLC included.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So yeah, because you can still, for whatever reason, you can still buy like the base game versions of like Dark Souls, Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3.
Probably just because Steam, they're just like, it's there.
Right.
Yeah, but it's weird because I don't know why.
Makes it very hard to wish list things. I have the same problem on the Xbox platform.
It's obnoxious.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's this one publisher on Switch that keeps like releasing a million, like whenever I look at the recent releases, there's like these 10 or 12 different games. They just keep releasing like a new version of it, like fanciful edition. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. You're just cluttering this eShop more than it already is, man.
Yeah.
It's ticking me off.
And it's impossible to search.
That.
Yeah.
One thing I was going to ask, where I can't think, I almost said it earlier, just because I wrote it down at some point, because I think at some point since the last time we recorded, or since I wrote down these notes, John, you picked up that PUNKCAKE bundle. Have you booted any of those games up?
So I played Metavax, Anticrypt. What else did I played? A couple others. And like I want to play, like that is something that I'm like, I want to just play more, because now that I like played those two in particular, I was like, I think I get what they're doing more now that I've played both of them. Because when I booted up Metavax, I was like, I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do.
That game's hard as hell, too.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not easy.
And then like Metavax, once I started playing that, Anticrypt. That's the one where it's like you have a like laser that you're...
Yeah, it's like a twin stick shooter, but like your cursor just moves on its own, and like you just move around essentially. So you don't get to aim at all. But
yeah, that's sick. Like
it's a genius concept. Like it's like they just take these like prototype ideas and like just go, let's just flesh it out into enough of a game, and then we're done.
But in the same way that like every time that you play a game that's developed by Sakurai, you like get his like idiosyncratic menu systems.
Mm-hmm. Oh, of course.
Yeah.
And it's like once I got like a little bit of that language from PUNKCAKE, I was like, okay, I get what you're doing. I understand how you like portray information, and I think that's cool. But like I did not get it with just one game.
Well, also I think they are both from France, if I'm not mistaken. So English is not their first language. Like there's definitely sometimes where it's like, why would they word it like that? That doesn't make sense. Or even like it's just kind of like whipped up in like, almost like Game Jam fashion, Game Jam plus, I guess, if you will. But they're just like whipping them up.
And I like
it makes enough sense.
I like the way that their stuff doesn't use a lot of text and is kind of like using the like theme of the game or like imagery from like the theme of the game to like kind of be in the place of what would otherwise just be like labeled out with words, which makes it a little bit harder to like parse, but once you understand like that's the method of delivery, then I think it's really cool and really effective.
And it makes it a little more immersive. Yeah, you're kind of like in the game world a little more. Like I love that Anticrypt like feeling of like you're like on the last hard drive in humanity, or I forget what the framing is exactly, but like you're like fighting your way through the corrupted files or whatever. It's just such a genius little concept.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're so good. I'm glad you picked that up and fired some of those up.
Yeah, I sent that over to like a couple of my friends, and I like got some. I forget if it was like polymenes, was like because I think they were looking at Hexel, and it was like, oh, this game reminds me of this, and then I looked it up, and I was like, I've never even heard of this, so like immediately bought that. And like,
okay,
I've got a couple of those like. Part of the reason why I also wanted to do a double tonight was how my brain works. I need to clear my cache so that I can play some new games.
Absolutely.
For sure, man.
Yep.
For sure.
Because there was an FPS sale and I got some nice weird looking ones as I think also Hyper Demon or whatever that one, someone in our Discord like recommended that. And it like,
it's a vague bell.
It's just like really like weird like visuals, like it looks like holographic stuff, like very intense, like FPS, like low, like PSX kind of, but more so than like, I don't know.
That's cool.
I'm excited to boot it up, but have
like
not
boomer shooter kind of vibes.
It's more of like 360 level twin stick, but like with that level of indie, like, but like it's weird. I don't know. I'm doing a terrible job explaining it or describing it.
You know, I forgot that I booted up too, and then we'll actually get to recording a proper episode here. But I forgot that I booted up that Warhammer 40K bolt gun for a minute. I basically just played like the opening like tutorial stage and then like the half of the next stage. But that was pretty fun, actually. It was just like so chunky and almost like
I did
gross
the same
looking. Yeah, I was like, this is kind of awesome.
Yeah,
it has a dedicated the button to just yell out stuff about. It's like glory to the God Emperor of mankind.
I don't know if I messed around with that at all.
It's just one of the buttons is just you yelling out like things.
I'm always a fan of that.
It knows that it's over the top. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely very over the top and just such a crunchy game.
Call back to its N64 brethren, just having a button dedicated to just yelling your character's emote over and over again.
Yeah, one of those, maybe even all 4 C buttons for each for their own.
Or alternatively, the D-pad if it's not in use otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. Like in a wrestling game, like some of those wrestling games exclusively use the D-pad for control, but like, for your taunts and stuff. Yeah, I'm gonna dance all over your face.
That's how you build up your super. Come on now. Yeah, you
Shawn Michaels.
Yeah, you got to flick the analog stick to do that. Yeah.
Oh God. Warzone, one of the worst but best wrestling games ever.
Yeah, Warzone was not great. I remember renting that though, and I didn't know the difference, and it was okay. Yeah,
I have that was the one I had growing up, so it's just the one that I have memories on.
That's Stone Cold is on the front of that one, I think, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Give him the mandible. God, that game was fun. What's up, Randall? No picture here. I just got a little RKO.
Yeah, I know.
Really?
Randy.
In honor of the recent WrestleMania. DJ just texted me actually telling me to watch WrestleMania the other day. He's like, it's worth watching. It's great.
All right.
I did watch it.
Again, you know what happens?
I don't know anything. You watched it, Randall?
Yeah, I watched it.
My man.
I did not watch. I never watched these live. I watched the replays, and then I turn a 5-hour schlock into about a 2-ish hour schlock.
Yeah, it's still a schlock.
That's still
nonetheless
a good amount.
But yeah, that shaves off a ton. Man, if you I don't know if any of you guys have ever watched like I don't know how well it works for other sports, but for football, if you watch those like condensed replay games, because I know you guys watch those for basketball.
Oh yeah.
But those condensed replays for football, especially because there's just so much like actual stoppage to the action, like they literally can show every play of a game in like 20 minutes.
Man,
crazy.
I would love to see that. That sounds like the ideal form of that sport for me.
Yes. Well, I kind of like the ebb and flow of like, it's a perfect like sport to just like watch while you're snacking and hanging out with friends.
And yet you hate turn-based combat.
Not necessarily.
No, you don't. Yeah.
As long as I can push buttons at the same time as my attacks land, that's all I care about.
I just want them to use the Final Fantasy ATB system.